The passengers on Flight 278 were just settling in, the soft hum of the engines filling the cabin, when tension quietly began to rise. An elderly black couple, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, smiled politely as they found their seats near the window. They were flying to visit their daughter after years apart, a trip they had been dreaming of for months. But what should have been a joyful journey took an unexpected turn when a flight attendant approached them with a cold expression and a sharp tone. At first, the couple thought it was a misunderstanding. Maybe there was a seat mix-up or a simple mistake. But when the flight attendant raised her voice and accused them of sitting in the wrong section, the other passengers began to turn their heads. Whispers filled the air. The Johnsons tried to explain, showing their boarding passes. But her attitude only grew harsher. Then, without warning, she demanded they leave the plane. Shocked and embarrassed, the elderly couple looked at each other, unsure what they had done wrong. A few passengers protested quietly, but no one dared to stand up to her. The moment felt heavy, almost unreal. By the time their daughter heard what happened, the story was already spreading online. But when she finally spoke up, her words didn't just defend her parents. They made the entire airline rethink what really happened on that flight. And that's where everything changed. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson had always believed in treating everyone with kindness. They were retired teachers, known in their small community for helping neighbors and mentoring kids who needed guidance. Their trip was meant to be peaceful, a long-awaited reunion with their daughter, Maya, who had recently graduated law school and settled in another city. They had saved for months, excited to finally see her new life. But instead of joy, they found themselves standing helplessly in the middle of an airport terminal, hearts pounding. Unsure of what just happened, witnesses said the flight attendant's tone had shifted the moment she saw them board. Some recalled how she looked frustrated before the incident, while others thought maybe it was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Yet, the way the couple was treated didn't sit right with many who watched. Videos began circulating online within hours, showing bits and pieces of the confrontation, a shaky clip of Mrs. Johnson quietly explaining, another of her husband clutching their boarding passes. When Maya saw the video that evening, her hands trembled. She replayed it over and over, disbelief turning into a quiet, burning resolve. She knew her parents. Respectful, and never once to cause trouble. Something deeper was going on here. While the airline tried to downplay the incident, the truth was spreading fast. And Maya, with her sharp mind and fearless voice, was about to make sure her parents' story didn't get buried like so many others. The next morning, Maya sat at her desk, scrolling through dozens of comments under the video. Some were angry, demanding accountability from the airline. Others questioned what had really happened. The clip didn't show everything, and that was what bothered her most. She wanted the truth, not just for her parents, but for everyone who had ever been quietly humiliated and brushed aside. Her father's voice over the phone still echoed in her mind, soft but trembling. "We didn't want trouble, sweetheart. We just wanted to fly." Determined, Maya began gathering details. She contacted passengers who had filmed the incident, asking for the full footage. A young woman who sat 2 rows behind her parents agreed to meet and share her side of the story. She recalled how the flight attendant seemed nervous even before takeoff, muttering something about keeping things orderly. To Maya, it felt like the perfect excuse, hiding something far uglier. Meanwhile, the airline's PR team released a short statement calling the event a safety misunderstanding, which only fueled more outrage online. Reporters began reaching out to Maya for comments, but she held back, knowing that one wrong word could twist the entire story. Her parents stayed quiet, too, though their smiles on video calls couldn't hide the weariness in their eyes. For the first time in their lives, they felt invisible, until Maya stepped forward. She had a plan forming, one that might finally make the world listen, but it would come at a cost. Maya stood in front of the airline's headquarters, gripping the folder in her hands. Inside were witness statements, video clips, and screenshots, everything she had gathered over the last week. The online video had gone viral, and now, the company had no choice but to respond. Cameras flashed as she walked toward the entrance, her heartbeat pounding in rhythm with the reporter's questions. Her parents had begged her not to make it bigger than it already was. But Maya couldn't stay silent anymore. This wasn't just about them, it was about every quiet injustice that had been ignored for too long. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was tense. The airline's legal team sat across from her, their polite smiles doing little to hide their discomfort. One of them spoke softly, suggesting that miscommunication might have caused the issue. But Maya interrupted, placing a printed photo of her parents on the table, the same moment caught on video. Their faces confused and humiliated. The silence that followed was sharp. Outside, a crowd had gathered, chanting for fairness and truth. Former passengers began coming forward, sharing similar stories online. The pressure was building, and the airline's public image was crumbling by the hour. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of the flight attendants from that same flight reached out to Maya anonymously. Her message was short but powerful. "You're right, it wasn't a mistake." Maya froze, realizing she was about to uncover something much bigger than she ever expected. Maya stared at the anonymous message on her screen, her heart racing. It wasn't a mistake. Those 4 words replayed in her mind like an alarm she couldn't silence. She quickly replied, asking who it was and what they meant. A few minutes later, a second message appeared, this time with an attached file. It was a copy of an internal email thread between staff members from the same flight. The messages hinted that the Johnsons had been flagged before boarding, though the reason wasn't clear. Someone in the crew had labeled them as potentially uncooperative, even though they had done nothing wrong. Maya sat frozen, realizing this was no random misunderstanding. Something deeper was hidden behind that official statement. She printed the emails, her hands trembling, and called the woman who had sent them. The voice on the other end was quiet, nervous. "I can't talk long," she whispered, "but I saw what really happened that day. It wasn't just that flight attendant's decision. She was told to remove them." Maya's chest tightened. "Told by who?" she asked, but the line went silent. Seconds later, the call disconnected. Meanwhile, the airline's executives were scrambling behind closed doors, trying to control the growing media storm. Rumors of internal bias and unfair treatment were spreading fast. Maya realized she wasn't just fighting for her parents anymore. She was up against a system trying to hide its own truth, and exposing it could change everything, for better or worse. The next morning, Maya released the emails to the public. Within hours, they were everywhere, trending on social media, replayed on news channels, and dissected by talk shows. The airline was forced to call an emergency press conference. Crowds gathered outside the headquarters, demanding answers. Inside, Maya sat beside her parents, their hands clasped together tightly. It had been days since they slept properly, but this moment felt bigger than exhaustion. It was about truth. As the airline's CEO stepped to the podium, cameras flashed wildly. He began with the usual apology, calling it an unfortunate series of miscommunications, but Maya stood up before he could finish. Calm, but firm. She addressed the room. "Miscommunication doesn't explain internal emails labeling my parents before they even boarded. It doesn't explain why they were singled out." Her words echoed through the room, followed by uneasy silence. Then, to everyone's shock, the flight attendant herself stepped forward. Her voice trembled as she admitted what no one expected. She had followed orders from a senior supervisor, who had flagged the couple without reason. "I was told they were on a watch list," she said quietly, "but I found out later that was false." Gasps filled the room. The supervisor was quickly identified and dismissed, and the airline issued a public apology to the Johnsons. But as Maya left the conference, her phone buzzed with another message from the anonymous whistleblower. It read only one line: that supervisor wasn't acting alone. Maya stopped walking. Realizing the story wasn't over yet, Maya stood in the parking lot after the press conference, the cool breeze brushing against her face. The message on her phone lingered in her mind, but for the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. Her parents stood beside her, quietly holding hands, grateful that the world had finally heard their story. Reporters still called out questions, but Maya smiled politely and walked away. Some battles, she knew, were meant to be fought quietly after the cameras stopped rolling. In the following weeks, the airline launched a full internal review. Policies were changed, new training was introduced, and the supervisor's actions led to deeper investigations. Though the company never revealed every detail, Maya's persistence had forced an industry-wide conversation about fairness, accountability, and respect. The viral story of the elderly black couple on Flight 278 had become more than just a trending headline. It became a reminder of the power of truth. Back home, life slowly returned to normal, but Johnson spent peaceful evenings on their porch, watching sunsets without fear or judgment. Maya often joined them, sipping tea as laughter replaced the tension that had once filled their days. One night, her father said softly, "You turned something painful into something good." Maya smiled, looking up at the sky. "I just wanted people to see what we've always believed, that kindness should never depend on how someone looks." And with that, their story came to a close, not with anger, but with hope.